I have always been the type of man who loves profoundly, perhaps excessively. I do not merely glance at individuals, I truly see them. When I do, I find myself captivated by the subtle details, the defined jawline, the slight protrusion of collarbones, the lean muscles beneath fair skin. There is an allure in a slender physique and delicate yet strong hands that draws me in irresistibly. I do not pursue broad shoulders or muscular arms, rather, I yearn for something refined, something that seems crafted to be admired. However, I do not openly express this sentiment. Most people perceive me as a quintessential man's man, a mechanic skilled with my hands, often found under the hood of a car, covered in grease and sweat. I have lived my life with a guarded demeanor, and relocating to Dallas was not going to alter that. When Ron reached out to inform me that he was launching his own business and required a reliable mechanic, I did not hesitate. He had been my closest friend for many years, a person I respected and who had always supported me. I packed my few belongings and drove directly into the heart of Texas. Ron's establishment was remarkable, spacious and modern, situated on a tranquil stretch of land just outside the city. It was the kind of residence that many aspire to own, but for him, it was simply home. He had built his life there with his wife before her passing, and now it was just him and his son, Harry. I had not seen Harry in years. The last time I encountered him, he was a child, running barefoot and too small to keep pace with the adults. However, upon entering Ron's home that first evening, I scarcely recognized him. The boy had vanished, replaced by a young man, tall, lean, with sharp features and soft expressions. His fair skin and tousled golden hair fell over his forehead, and his eyes possessed an uncanny ability to see right through you, as if he perceived truths you were not yet prepared to confront. I reassured myself that it was inconsequential. I was there to work, to rebuild my life, to demonstrate my worth. Yet, from that very first night, I sensed that I was in deeper trouble than I had anticipated. The days slipped by in a whirlwind of labor. Long hours spent at the workshop. Late nights spent beneath the hood of a vehicle. The aroma of oil and metal lingering on my skin. I appreciated the fatigue, as it kept my mind occupied and prevented it from wandering. However, upon entering Ron's house at the end of the day, there he was, Harry, always present, always observing. Initially, I believed I was imagining things. Perhaps he was merely curious, recalling me from his childhood and trying to understand the man I had become. Yet, I began to notice subtle details, the way he lingered during our conversations, how his gaze seemed to study every aspect of me, and the excuses he made to be near me, sitting beside me on the couch, brushing against me as he passed. I reassured myself that it was nothing more than a young boy looking up to his father's close friend, but deep down, I recognized the truth, and it terrified me. The night everything shifted, I had just returned from work, utterly exhausted, my body aching from the long hours spent in the garage. The relentless Texas heat clung to my skin, leaving me soaked in sweat and dust. All I desired was a long, cold shower to cleanse away the day. The house was silent. Ron had left a note on the kitchen counter, indicating he had to attend to something and would return the following day. I barely glanced at it, my thoughts already focused on the shower, on the water that would cool me down, relieve the tension in my muscles, and help me breathe. As soon as I entered the bathroom, I removed my soiled clothes, tossing them into the corner. The water initially ran hot, steam enveloping me, before I adjusted it to a cooler temperature, allowing it to cascade over my body. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly, letting go of the day's burdens. I did not hear the door open, nor did I realize I was not alone until I turned, water streaming down my face, and there he stood, Harry, just inside the bathroom, frozen in place. His eyes were fixed on me, as if he had stumbled upon something unexpected yet could not look away. My heart raced, and the air between us felt dense, charged with unspoken tension. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words escaped my lips. For the first time since ID's arrival, I could see it clearly etched on his face. He was not merely standing there in shock, he had made a conscious choice to be present. This realization ignited a slow-burning awareness within me. I should have spoken up, urged him to leave, fetched a towel, or taken any action other than remaining frozen in place. My breath hitched in my throat, and my body felt immobilized. Yet, I remained silent, captivated by the way he gazed at me, eyes wide, lips slightly parted, breath uneven. It was as if a shift had occurred, erasing the careful distance we had maintained and leaving only an undeniable tension between us. Steam curled in the air, the only sound being the rhythmic drip of water onto the tile. My chest rose and fell with deliberate slowness, my hands clenched at my sides, willing myself to break the spell. Then he moved, slowly and hesitantly, taking a single step forward. His gaze flickered downward for a brief moment before snapping back to mine. That look, oh, that look. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to emerge. "Harry," I managed, my tone rougher than intended, a mixture of warning and plea. He hesitated, fingers gripping the hem of his shirt as if weighing a decision, testing boundaries, gauging how far I would allow this to progress. My breath caught, he was pushing limits. I should have intervened, stepped back, made it clear that whatever this was could not continue. But I did not, for the truth was that I had been losing this battle since the moment I entered this house. A sharp knock at the front door shattered the moment. Harry flinched, his eyes darting toward the hallway. I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The spell was broken, and the space between us surged back. My body resumed motion. His voice was barely a whisper, but he did not complete his thought. Instead, he turned and walked away, leaving behind only the lingering ghost of what had transpired. The weight of his presence and the rapid beating of my heart that night rendered me unable to sleep. I lay there, fixated on the ceiling, replaying every moment in my mind, the way he had gazed at me, the overwhelming desire I felt to let events unfold, regardless of the consequences. This was not merely a fleeting attraction, it was not just a momentary lapse in judgment. It was him, Harry, making me forget every rule and boundary I had vowed never to cross. I was uncertain how much longer I could resist. As morning arrived, Ron did not. A message illuminated my phone shortly after dawn: "Change of plans, stuck overnight, will return tomorrow." I stared at the screen, a slow realization dawning upon me: this meant another entire day alone with him. I was unprepared for this. I immersed myself in various tasks to keep busy, working on my truck for hours, my muscles aching from the effort, attempting to exhaust myself to avoid thinking. I steered clear of the house, avoided seeing him, and evaded the temptation that had nearly overwhelmed me the previous night. However, avoiding him proved futile. When I finally stepped inside, drenched in sweat with my shirt clinging to my back, there he was, sitting on the couch, barefoot, one knee drawn up, fingers idly tracing the rim of a glass. He looked up, and I instinctively knew, even before he uttered a word, that something was destined to happen that night, and I would not intervene. The house was eerily quiet, the atmosphere between us charged. I had spent the entire day evading him, fleeing from something I understood I could not escape. Now, standing in the kitchen, gripping a glass of water as if it could steady my trembling hands, I recognized the futility of my efforts. Harry was right there, leaning against the counter, arms crossed over his chest, observing me. I had not spoken since entering, nor had he, but words were unnecessary, the silence was deafening. He took a deliberate step forward, causing my body to tense. With another step, I placed the glass down, my fingers clutching the edge of the counter. He was now close enough for me to see the movement of his throat as he swallowed. He felt the rhythm of his pulse beneath his skin as he swallowed. I should have turned away, but then he spoke: "You don't have to pretend." His voice was soft and steady, neither a question nor a challenge, but rather a truth laid bare between us, like a live wire, crackling and waiting for one of us to make contact. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "Harry, you don't understand what you're saying." His lips curled slightly, as if he were on the verge of smiling. "Yes, I do." Then he reached for me, not hurriedly or desperately, but with a slow, cautious motion, as if he feared I might flee if he pressed too hard. His fingers grazed my forearm, a fleeting touch that sent a shiver coursing through me. I shut my eyes, pleading silently, "Don't do this." "I see the way you look at me," he murmured. "You can keep convincing yourself it means nothing, but we both know that's not true." My heart raced, my breath became erratic, and then he moved even closer, his chest brushing against mine. His fingers encircled my wrist, anchoring me in place. I remained still, not pulling away, because he was right. I had been deceiving myself since the moment I entered this house that night. The atmosphere had shifted, Ron was still absent, the house remained silent, but I was no longer evading the truth. We sat on the couch, close yet not touching. The television flickered in the background, but neither of us paid attention. I could sense the tension building between us, a slow, mounting pressure poised to break. Without uttering a word, Harry rose. I looked up, my breath hitching as he approached me. This time, he did not hesitate or second-guess, he was certain of what he wanted, and so was I. The air was thick, heavy with unspoken words. As Harry stood before me, his body mere inches from mine, the flickering light from the television cast shadows across his defined features, his collarbone visible beneath the loose fabric of his shirt. His breathing was steady yet deep. I anticipated what was about to unfold, and I made no move to stop it. He reached down first, slowly and deliberately, his fingers gliding over my skin. The sensation of his touch was almost ethereal, yet the heat radiated through me with an intensity that was undeniable. My stomach tightened, and I could feel my pulse racing, loud enough for me to hear. I had the option to stand up and walk away, but I chose not to. Instead, I allowed him to continue. His fingers glided along my forearm with a confidence that sent shivers coursing through my skin. I swallowed hard, my breath uneven, every nerve in my body heightened. "Harry," I spoke, my voice low and unsteady. He did not respond, instead, he gazed at me intently, as if waiting for me to put an end to this moment. Yet, I had no intention of stopping, for any restraint I had previously maintained had vanished. It began gradually, his fingers pressing gently against my chest, tracing the outline of my shirt, testing boundaries that no longer seemed to exist. My body reacted instinctively, leaning into his touch, yearning for more. Then he did something that made my stomach twist, a small yet deliberate action that left me breathless. He grasped the fabric of my shirt and tugged gently, not forcefully, silently asking for permission. I exhaled sharply through my nose and then reached down, grasping the back of my shirt and pulling it over my head in one fluid motion. I sensed his breath hitch, felt his gaze traverse my form, lingering on my shoulders, my chest, my stomach. When his fingers finally made contact with my skin, warm and soft, exploring, it sent a profound sensation through me, one I had not experienced in a long time. "Jesus," he murmured, more to himself than to me. I released a slow breath, gripping the back of the couch to maintain my composure. The last thing I wanted was to lose control too quickly. But then he leaned in, his breath brushing against my neck, close enough to feel yet not touching. The anticipation alone ignited a heat within me, spreading like wildfire. This was not merely attraction, it was something far deeper, something perilous. I found myself unable to resist any longer. Turning my head, I finally locked eyes with him, and in that moment, whatever restraint I had left shattered. The ensuing moments became a blur, a chaotic intertwining of hands, skin, and breathless gasps, our bodies pressing together with an urgency that neither of us could deny. At some point, I found myself guiding him down the hallway, the space between us vanishing entirely. We arrived at his room before I even realized it. He fell onto the mattress first, his hands gripping my arms as I hovered above him, my body still tense, clinging to the last remnants of control. I could still choose to stop this, to walk away, but as his fingers traced over my ribs, outlining every defined muscle, and as his legs shifted beneath mine, I felt his breath hitch, barely holding himself together. In that moment, I understood that I had never stood a chance. Hours slipped by in a haze of soft whispers and deep sighs, our fingertips gliding over each other's skin as if we were committing every detail to memory. I hadn't experienced anything like this in years, perhaps never. When the world finally came back into focus, the room was dimly lit, with only a sliver of light filtering in from the hallway. My body felt drained, my heartbeat gradually slowing, and my skin still warm from his touch. I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling, attempting to process the whirlwind of events that had just unfolded. Beside me, Harry shifted, his body almost too close, his head resting against my shoulder, fingers absent-mindedly tracing patterns along my arm. We remained silent for a long while, but when he finally spoke, his voice was softer than I had ever heard. "You're not leaving, are you?" The question struck me deeply, for it became clear that he was not merely inquiring about my departure from the room, he was asking if I intended to leave him altogether. I exhaled slowly, turning onto my side to face him. "I'm still here." The relief that flickered across his face was subtle, yet palpable. As he shifted closer, pressing his forehead against my chest, I instinctively wrapped my arms around him. This was not merely about the night, it was something far more significant. I found myself grappling with a truth I was not yet prepared to acknowledge, yet deep down, I understood that this moment was far from its conclusion. The night unfolded before us, stretching infinitely, enveloped in a warmth I had never experienced before. I should have been contemplating, should have been anxious, should have been questioning what lay ahead, but in that instant, I was not. In that moment, nothing else mattered, only him, only us. Harry lay beside me, his body still pressed against mine, his breathing calm and steady. His finger had not ceased its gentle movement, tracing slow, lazy circles over my chest and ribs, as if he were attempting to memorize me through touch alone. Occasionally, he would shift just enough to let his lips graze my shoulder, collarbone, and jaw, and I welcomed it, desiring it as much as he did, perhaps even